Rajesh, welcome to the podcast and thank you for making time to do this.
Hi, Dheeraj. Good to be with you.
Excellent. So, Rajesh, since this is so fresh, right? You're just back from a new launch of XUV 700 and a new identity around it as well. I'm just being tempted to start the conversation with that. And from an outside in view, obviously, the 700 is looking, very cool. The images are very sexy, if I might say so. But the more intriguing is the new identity, right? Of building almost a new identity around Mahindra SUVs. And from a pure marketing thinking, I'd like you to kind of tell us what's really going on here. I mean, is it at some stage that you found that Mahindra as a large portfolio brand name was limiting premiumization or was not aiding a sense of semiotics in terms of technology, engineering, etc., or is it coming from another sense of opportunity?
Dheeraj, the answer, I guess, is a little bit of all. Uh,
Yeah,
we clearly wanted to bring in focus into the SUV portfolio. A year back, we embarked on the task of saying what do we want our SUV brand to stand for and what's the brand idea. And the brand idea we defined at that time was explore the impossible. And then
yeah,
along with, and that was based on an insight, and we followed this brand gym framework, and we defined the personality elements that we wanted for the brand, and we defined some of the pillars on which we would differentiate the product, and then we defined that completely into how that would play out by way of what the Mahindra DNA would be and how the
hmm,
products of the future would represent the Mahindra DNA. Having gone through that whole process of defining the brand idea and really saying that we want our SUVs to be personal and aspirational.
yeah,
We don't want to play in shared mobility space. So you start taking some product decisions,
yeah,
and you also then obviously need to create a bit of exclusivity. You want to create aspirational value, and you still want to keep the Mahindra name because there is a lot of value to the Mahindra name.
yeah,
And an interesting way to deal with that was to say, let's look at a different visual identity which goes on the product. The road
yeah.
ahead logo is not a Mahindra corporate logo. It
Yes.
over the last 7-8 years is a logo used only on mobility products.
Hmm.
So if you look at our visiting cards, it just has the Mahindra lettermark. It doesn't have a
Right.
logo.
Right.
And that allowed us the space to separate the logos depending on the product portfolio. So we interestingly done this transformation. We worked on it for a while, and then we
Hmm.
had Pratap Bose who joined us a month and a half or two back, and he gave a very interesting take on it, and we adapted to that. So
Hmm.
the idea of doing a new visual identity evolved many months back, and we were working on that. The vehicles were being readied for that, and
Hmm.
he brought in a new tweak, which is very interesting because I don't know if you've had a chance to see a short video he's put out, and it'll be very
Yes.
interesting for you
Yeah.
to see that,
I did. I did. Yeah.
which basically has the M inside, which is the
Hmm.
heritage, and then
Hmm.
the explosive M outside,
Yeah.
which is about the future, and then you have an M&M.
Yeah.
And there is also the X motive, which represents explore the impossible and the
Yeah.
window of opportunity and the blue sky to get there. So it's
Yeah.
a very interesting layering of an identity.
Yeah. So if I hear you right, you're keeping the broad umbrella of Mahindra and the broad parental support of Mahindra and still narrowing and sharp focusing the SUV proposition for
That's right.
personalization and premiumization. That
That's right.
seems to be the thinking.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then the dealerships will, of course, transform as well with the new identity, new signage, and all of that, which will carry the new visual identity and the logo.
Right. So it allows you then to build slightly more distinct values to the SUV brand from the parent automotive brand, so to say.
That's right. Yeah. That's right.
Yeah, yeah. So related to that, Rajesh, I wanted to ask you another question. When we look at stretch in India, stretch of brands in India, right? I mean, classical theory says that brands have to be pretty much locked to their categories, right? So you build a brand to a category and then you work really hard to stretch it beyond category. So where can Dettol stretch? Maybe to a hand wash, maybe to a soap, and so on and so forth, right? uh, India, however, has been different, right? I mean, say a brand such as Tata's, right? You can buy anything from a salt to a premium airline from them. Of late, if I might quote what Bhavesh is doing with Ola, right? I mean, started with ride sharing, and ride sharing also had its own kind of connotations to the brand, because a service brand is not always perfect. It might be late, it might be dirty, and so on and so forth. You have service issues with a brand such as that, but he's been able to, or at least trying to, change to a manufacturer, technology, engineering brand through the two-wheelers, right? So there is perhaps a theory there to say that increasingly, and at least in India, brands are more locked to values or a certain narrative than the category, because you have a set of audience who's buying for, say, trust and commitment, to say that I will not go wrong buying a Mahindra product. I will not go wrong buying, say, an Ola product, or I will not go wrong buying a Tata product. And then it's okay. I mean, do you have a capability to build a SUV? I will buy that. Uh, do you see that is playing out in India, or are you seeing that in your case, Mahindra as a brand is actually a detractor to some of the sub brands? How do you see that mix playing out?
Yeah, Dheeraj, there's no right answer to this question, and you know that.
Yeah,
So it's always getting that right balance on how much to stretch and where to
yeah.
stretch. And as long as marketeers and brand owners, we don't do that recklessly,
Hmm.
and we know the limits and we understand what the limits are, because even values is a very generic term. It's very
Yeah.
non-specific, it's very subjective. So sometimes you will stretch and you will realize that stretch doesn't work, and
Hmm.
sometimes you can stretch and the stretch works, right? So let's take an example of a stretch that didn't work for us.
Hmm.
We thought that because we are in SUVs we can sell 100 cc bikes
Hmm.
using the Mahindra name.
Yeah.
Now if we had made bikes which had a very strong value proposition, very compelling,
Hmm.
very different, or at a completely different, cost structure,
Hmm.
then that the product had the capability to disrupt the market.
Hmm.
But if your product is by and large equal to competition with some advantages, and we did have many advantages, but were they significantly noticeable advantages which would rock the category?
Hmm.
Uh, you're not, just because you're the Mahindra brand, you won't succeed with
Hmm.
small differentiation drivers. Uh, to take the Ola example, I think what's working there is, yes, Ola is associated with some amount of technology,
Yeah.
but they probably created a value proposition which is disruptive, and that
Yes.
allows the brand to stretch. If they just
Yeah.
stretch the brand but didn't create a disruptive value proposition or an offering or a design proposition, it probably won't have got the traction that it did. So
Yeah.
I think in the category in which we are, product comes before brand.
Hmm.
People just using XUV without a product which was liked is not going to succeed.
Hmm.
So XUV 700 has the traction not just because it is carrying the XUV badge, or not because it's carrying
Hmm.
the Mahindra badge, because there is something that we are offering which is exciting people,
Hmm.
and that's a bundle of offerings, and
Hmm.
that's what helps. So at least in my learning in the automotive business, nothing about product. Your
Hmm.
product and your service on ground has to be outstanding. You
Hmm.
can build a brand around that, and if
Hmm.
you don't have that, the greatest of brands won't succeed.
Hmm. So this is very interesting. You're saying that the product has to have the velocity to open the market up, and then maybe if the brand has a bit of awareness, it helps, because then you kind of lessen your expenditure on building pure awareness or pure basic amount of trust values.
Yeah, but even that, I think some of our competitors who launched recently have
Hmm.
redefined. A completely unknown brand have come in and done extremely well.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
that's redefined the paradigm of what awareness you need to create a success at launch. So,
Yeah.
I think these are all paradigms. You just need a great product. You need to
Hmm.
get it out there, communicate your narrative well,
Hmm.
and the brand will build.
Yeah, that's a scary one, I must say, for a brand builder, right? No, but you're so right, because that's happening so much even in today's startup world, right? I mean, look
Yeah.
at all the D2C brands. I mean, I have spent a lot of time building personal care brands, and we used to talk about trust, and we used to go to focus group discussions with women, and they would say, I would not put anything on my skin but Lux or a hammam. And here you have personal care brands being built in 3 years, 4 years time, right? I mean, all those questions of trust have gone. People are buying online,
Yeah.
they are trying with new products. So a lot of those paradigms are being questioned.
I think, Dheeraj, what the trigger points are greater awareness, access to information, role of social media, uh, generally more willingness to take risks,
Yeah.
and I think the ability to get reassurance from multiple other sources
Yes.
is a big enabler, which wasn't there in the past.
Yeah. Yeah. So, for example, yeah, I mean, how do people react to in terms of their reviews of the product, or how
Exactly, absolutely.
influencers are talking about it? And
Yeah,
some of the marketing machineries also evolved
yeah,
there, where you don't just have to bank on broadcast, because broadcast also carried a bit of mistrust, if you may like, and influencers lessen that to a bit of an extent.
yeah. We are kind of reaching the conclusion that we have to use minimum of mainstream media to market.
Hmm.
In our
Wow, that's.
category, it's not really necessary.
But Rajesh, do you think that's true more of Mahindra as a brand, because you have that threshold of awareness, etc.? Because I also go back to a lot of my experience. We built Amazon, we are building Spotify, we are building PhonePe, all new age digital brands, but all built through advertising. I mean, all built through TV, in fact.
Yeah, I think it's also the level of interest in a category,
Hmm.
and the level of involvement in a category. An automotive category is a very involved purchase. It is very,
Yeah,
people are very passionate about it. When something new is happening, if it's interesting and exciting, uh, there's a proactive search for information.
yeah,
And just anecdotally on the XUV 700 launch, Autocar, I mean, all the media reviews come out, journalist reviews come out tomorrow. They're all embargoed so that everybody finishes and everybody gets it out tomorrow.
hmm.
And the Autocar teaser of the review got 1 million views. Just the teaser of the review that
Yeah,
they're going to do.
without any
Cross.
media push.
Yeah, so that's there,
Yeah,
just there,
yeah,
the teaser they put out,
it's editorial. Yeah,
talking about the media review that they're going to do on 18th got crossed 1 million views.
yeah,
So there is, when there is interest in the category, there is an interest in product, there's a natural information seeking that's happening, and you probably then don't need too much more. In the case of Thar, we made a theme commercial a year back,
yeah, yeah.
and not played it even once.
Wow.
So we just never have got around to using it. And in the case of XUV 700, we haven't made a theme commercial.
Yeah. Wow. And it's all organic digital push.
Yeah, but we made content, but we focus the content around,
Yeah.
creating interest, product, so
Yeah.
on and so forth. And
Yeah.
we just haven't made a theme commercial at all.
Yeah. Which also means that, we have to bank more on discoverability by consumer
Yeah,
rather than broadcast by the brand. I mean, it's
sure.
far more
Yeah,
authentic in that way.
that's right. Yeah.
Yeah, that's very interesting. Rajesh, I wanted to ask you this question that, I mean, and obviously, having been in the business for some time, about 2 decades back, right, everything which was international and foreign, that's when I started working, was cool in India, right? And we used to always think about, what about Indian brands? Can we succeed in fashion products? Can we succeed in auto? Can we succeed in premium segments, right? And cut to today, I mean, you see a Mahindra car in Europe or any other shores, and you feel a sense of pride, right? Indian brands, products across categories, technology, engineering are doing really well, really strong, right? Uh, do you think this has a cap? Do you think I mean, Mahindra would tomorrow, uh, if you wanted, or if you have a plan, would become a luxury brand as well? Do you think Indian brands can go all across, have all barriers gone, and what has led to this?
I don't think it's a question of Indian brand or non-Indian brand, to be
Hmm.
honest. I that's not the framework I would use
Hmm.
to decide whether we can go into a luxury brand or not. It depends on what that brand value proposition is about, and how much, going back to the earlier conversation, how much can you stretch it?
Yeah.
And given the segments in which we play, I don't think we can stretch an Indian, our brand Mahindra, to become a luxury brand. Consumers won't
Hmm.
want it. You want the
Yeah.
exclusivity
Yeah.
when you're going into a luxury brand space. So if it were to be a Mahindra product with a different badge, and the product is worthy of being a luxury product, I don't think people
Hmm.
won't buy it because it's not a global
Sure.
brand. So I think we just have to again go back to saying, does the product live up to the expectation, and how stretchable
Yeah.
is the brand?
Yeah. But tell me, that weren't cars locked to country of origin like German cars or European cars? There was a sense there, right? Or not?
No, yeah, you're right. So there is definitely a country of association related to cars, and at least in India, Indian is a country of association. So
Awesome. Yeah. That's amazing. Yes. Yeah. Yeah. That's powerful.
yeah.
Yeah. So Rajesh, I want to shift gears a bit, and last time I met you, you gave me a excellent proposition about box one, box two, and box three, right? And that time I was just about taking up Leo Burnett, and we used that. In fact, last year we launched Leo Burnett Consult, Leo Burnett Digital, and Leo Burnett Design as our newer forays, and in our preparation to be arrowhead into the new world. A lot is changing in automotive as well, right? I mean, there's a lot of narrative on EV. I really don't know how real that narrative is going to be, because there are questions around infrastructure, and will it go the distance, and so on and so forth. What would you say is box two, box three for Mahindra, as you're seeing in automotive space? Is EV the big future? How are you managing, navigating, thinking that piece?
Okay. So let me answer that using farm equipment first, and then using automotive both.
Yeah.
I'll play that out for you on both. So if you were to look at the box one, box two, box three on the farm equipment space, the box one is clearly our core tractor business, domestic. We may
Hmm.
extend that to saying tractor exports.
Hmm.
Box two becomes farm machinery, are either attachments or self-propelled. Becomes newer markets where you create a ground presence. And box three becomes markets where you haven't been in at all, or newer areas of technology, like we have precision ag, farming as a service. So for us,
Hmm.
that's box three,
Hmm.
and we've structured around that. So we've kept our tractor businesses, which are the core business, as the large scale mature businesses. We've created a separate business unit for farm machines. We have a separate
Hmm.
business unit to manage our global entities, and we have a separate business unit called farming as a service, which is the Krishi offering, which includes rental models, technology like precision ag, and so on and so forth. So we kind of structured ourselves to manage our short-term core growth, P&Ls, efficiencies, and separated out the emerging growth areas where you need to build newer skills and competencies. And you need a bit more of a startup culture, greater risk
Hmm.
taking, so
Yeah.
on. On the automotive side, I mean, if I was just to take so our core SUVs is obviously our core box one.
Hmm.
Uh, I would say right now, the what we call last mile mobility in electric would be an
Hmm.
example of box two, because
Hmm.
it is closer to, it's an extension of a commercial vehicle business, but closer to an inflection point.
Hmm.
Box two would also include what is called electric vehicles derived out of IC vehicles, which is, you
Hmm.
convert your uh, internal combustion engine products into
Yeah.
electric. And box three then becomes your born electric, which are completely new
Hmm.
platforms and
Yeah.
so on. So clearly, and then we've done the same thing there. We've created a separate vertical led by a German origin person based called Uli, based in Detroit, who's
Hmm.
leading born electric vehicles as a platform, and separated
Sure.
out that organization because that's preparing us for 2025 to 2030, and
Hmm.
completely separated that organization from delivering the next 2 or 3 years of products.
Hmm. So you're saying it's not just a new project. It's like a completely new organizational structure because the asks of that segment are so different.
Yeah, and you want that focus to, you don't want the short-term focus
Hmm.
in an organization which is around delivering your current year quarters, so on and so forth, which is comes out of efficiency, so on and
Yeah.
so forth, come in the way of longer term thinking and longer term competency building. So you kind of start separating teams to work on it.
But Rajesh, tell me, are you seeing EV as a 5-year horizon right now, or are you seeing EV as something which is going to get to inflection in a year or two?
In a year or two, our take is the last mile mobility, which is commercial, will
Hmm.
move very quickly in the next 2 to 3 years.
Hmm.
Because they don't need that much of battery infrastructure. The economics are very good because the per day running rate
Yeah.
is at a level which gives economic returns to the operator. So I think we'll see a very strong usage in commercial, even cars, but we're
Yeah.
not going to participate in that shared mobility space. And I would think 2024, 25 onwards in the personal space.
Hmm. So there is, you think there is a bit of a time that we have before we hit that
Yeah, I think
zone.
that's for that space to take off, you need a national charging infrastructure and cost curves to come down further.
Yeah. 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 So, Rajesh, the beginning of the pandemic got us thinking a lot, right? I mean, suddenly here we were without a plan, without a model, and we are now 18 months past that. But when we entered pandemic, one of the biggest things I realized was that all models and frameworks were geared up for the long term. Right, I mean, every organization, every brand was saying 5-year hence, 10-year hence, right? And I figured that there was no framework to navigate the short term,
Yeah.
right? And in fact, short term was seen something low down upon. You said, oh, that leader is so short term focused, right? And being long term focus was eulogized. And we created a thinking model called 036, and we said, what are the big patterns shifts happening in 0? What are the big shifts happening in 3? What are the big shifts happening in 6? And what are your core equities of your business and your brand, and how can you therefore leverage that? And we work with a lot of clients to develop products, brand solutions. For example, for one of our clients called shadi.com, we in fact took the whole great fat Indian wedding online. So we organized right from mehdi to dhol to invitations, and we took the whole marriage business online because it was linked to mahurat, and if you lost that, you lost it, right? Similarly, for somebody such as Whisper, we launched a platform called Mobile Shala, where we brought education to girls because there was patriarchy even in the pandemic. While boys were being allowed for education in Indian homes, girls were being denied that. So we created those short-term solutions, right? Now, in case of automotive, right, where the infrastructure, the investments are such long-term, right? I always worry, how do we look at, or do we at all look at a short-term model in a, can there be a version of this model for infra heavy, commitment heavy, long term heavy categories such as automotive?
Yeah, I think we've got to segment or fragment the business model into product and non-product. The
Hmm.
product model, clearly you have no choice for it to be long term, but
Yeah.
the agility will come out of platforms and commonality.
Hmm.
So the greater your products are based on a commonality and a platform strategy, the more agility you have to adapt and create variations and reduce the time to market. The
Hmm.
more you're going to do fundamental new work, the longer is going to be the lead time. So agility will come out of driving commonality and platform configurability on the product side. But on the non-product side, there's a lot of room for agility. I mean, your
Hmm.
go-to-market, customer value propositions, financing packages,
Yeah.
online ordering systems, so on and so forth. There is a need for agility. We had launched a Mahindra own online in 3 or 4 months of the
Hmm.
pandemic starting to enable people to have a no-touch experience or no-touch service experiences in the workshops and so on and so forth. So there's a lot of scope for agility in the non-product part, right?
Hmm.
And that you can turn around very quickly. Uh, I don't think there's anything like an organization should be only long-term focused or short-term focused. And
Hmm.
at least I come from a strong belief that leaders have to have the ability to seamlessly transition between both the hats.
Hmm.
And you, as any of us as leaders, have to be able to be hands-on, roll up our sleeves when we need it,
Hmm.
and we have to wear a different hat, which is preparing us for the long term. And
Hmm.
very often leaders get into the mindset that, my role as a leader is only to create the future, and then there are others below me who are going to drive the short term. I don't think it works
Yeah.
like that.
Hmm.
I think as leaders we have to know where we have to go into depth, even if it's a short term issue, if the situation needs it.
Hmm.
And you have to create enough time and bandwidth to think about the future, and you have
Hmm.
to be able to adapt and adjust depending on how the situation is.
There is no either or, you're saying it has to be both.
It has to be both. It has to be both all the time, not only in times of crisis.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, that's interesting. Carrying on our conversation, I wanted to shift gears a bit, and I wanted to pick your brains on digitization. Right now, digitization obviously a big buzzword in all our lives today, right? And it has a huge range, right? From how do you create products to how do you create service. I mean, for example, I'm told some of the new EV vehicles can have updates over the air, right? So it could have diagnosis, which is chip based and so on and so forth. So, I mean, even in automotive, the technology is going to that level. Marketing, for example, is now hugely digitized as well, right? So, how does digitization work, and also in the wide spectrum of the consumer segments that you play in, right, from rural to urban? If you can talk to us a bit about what is the spread you are seeing there, and what's the change that you are seeing on a daily basis.
So clearly, the urban-rural divide, as one may call it, or the line separating the two, is diminishing pretty quickly. And
Okay.
we often try to categorize this maybe more than it should be.
Hmm.
So we have to think that a lot of people in rural are very connected to people in semi-urban. Let's not necessarily call it urban, but it's semi-urban, right?
Hmm.
They may live in their village and go to work either in a government job or in some other kind of a
Yeah.
private enterprise in a bigger town. There may be others who are living in a semi-urban town, but they still have their farm and so on in a village which may be an hour away from where they live, right? And there is this seamless migration of people and interface of people
Yeah.
between these two sections. People in rural are seeing the benefit of broadband connectivity, whichever way it is going to them, and are very exposed to everything that's happening through the access to what through WhatsApp, and I think YouTube will be the two kind of key things driving rural consumption. Even in tractor demand, even before the pandemic, we started seeing that a lot of the prospects would come in with having done a pre-review of options.
Hmm.
And very often, maybe it's not the farmer who's going to buy himself or herself who's doing that, but a younger member of the family
Yeah.
who is more digitally savvy, who does it for them and
Hmm.
shows them YouTube videos and says, okay, this is what we saw, this is what somebody has put out, these are the posts by other users in our community. So, they're all accessing information like anybody in urban India. So, I really don't think we should wear a different hat about on how we follow marketing strategy to reach urban versus rural. I think there's, uh, the information access now is seamless
Yeah.
for both.
It's almost like everybody's on the same table suddenly.
Right, right, absolutely.
Yeah. No, we saw that as well. I mean, for example, we're building Amazon. Bulk of our demand came from tier two, tier three,
Yeah,
right? And not because of convenience, right? People have time; they could go to
yeah,
12 shops, but the demand came from Pilibhit, because for the girl sitting in Pilibhit, she wouldn't find that dress in the
correct.
Pilibhit market. She'll find it on Amazon. So it was the idea of access
Yeah,
which was driving rather than anything else.
yeah.
But tell me, Rajesh, I mean, a lot of, for example, I was talking to Mainak, right? Mainak runs Kimberly Clark in India, and he was saying that during the pandemic, large machines have been set up, right? And he's saying the entire training has happened through AR. augmented reality, because
Yeah.
nobody could come from China or go to China,
Yeah.
and so on and so forth.
Yeah.
So technology obviously has become such a huge, delta in last 18 months in terms of how we are buying, checking out products, etc. We have a client called Car Dekho. They are saying one click buy, right? You can see the entire product online, click and buy, right? So some shift has happened. Do you think these shifts are permanent, or come tomorrow, everybody's got second vaccinations, pandemic kind of goes down a bit, and we'll all be back to the same old habits and behaviors?
I think it'll be a midpoint.
Mm.
I don't think everybody will go back to where they were, and I don't think it is advisable to stay where we are.
Mm.
So we all have to find what's the right new hybrid point. Uh, the change that I see is there will be the meetings will involve much more. The objective of meetings will be less transactional and more brainstorming, creative, bonding,
Mm.
relationships. So the reason to meet will be in meetings where you need that.
Mm.
And meetings which were purely transactional, I think will start moving to digital modes. And I mean, like, you took the example of installing machines with AR support from the supplier in a different
Mm.
country. Uh, we've done a lot of that too, but it is suboptimal. And
Okay.
you do
Mm.
want people at some time. So if earlier the frequency of visit was 6, maybe now you would say, okay, let's have it
Yeah.
twice. But 0 is not the right point.
Mm.
You do want somebody to come there, and many of these are touch and feel businesses. You want people out there, but you definitely didn't need 6 visits. You can do with lesser. And many
Mm.
of the intermittent visits, the number of people who move, I think all of that will come down.
Mm. But in terms of showrooms, etc., if you're reimagining your showrooms right now with the new identity, are you rethinking them in this context, or would they still have the same traditional structure? Would you still be equipped to handle every walk-in the way it was, or would the system shift a bit to say, okay, let's manage 70% of it online, and let's get to the showroom only when it is required? Would that change?
Yeah, see, the thing is, we are not the decision makers of that. The consumer is.
Hmm.
And I think what the change that I see is, and that's already happened, is that search is happening online.
Yeah. Yeah.
So a consumer is shortlisting what they're interested in. But
Yeah.
once they have shortlisted what they're interested in, they all want to touch and feel.
Hmm.
Unless it's like a repeat purchase, that product brand is in the
Yeah.
family, or somebody else who has it, and you just need to finalize the trim level and negotiate the price and so on, and maybe that can happen online. But anything new that you want, people enjoy going and experiencing it. I mean, the whole fun of buying a vehicle is about the touch and feel experience. I mean, it's a process. You enjoy buying it. It's not just a routine thing in your life.
Hmm.
So there is a role that touch and feel is going to play. There is a role that test drives are going to be an important part of the buying process.
Hmm.
So we have to prepare for that. I think the casual walk-ins on information seeking, that's anyway gone. Even
Yeah.
pre-pandemic, everybody has enough reviews and comparative material to search, to shortlist what they're interested in.
Hmm. And would you imagine that a EV two-wheeler model of direct to home succeed in India, where maybe you have a showroom where you can experience the product, but like Amazon, it's sent to your home?
Um, See, I mean, even in cars, test drives do happen at home, lots of them.
Yeah.
Deliveries do happen at home. The key thing is what's the transaction point? And is the
Yeah.
transaction point going to be an online ordering to delivery system, or do you need a dealer interface?
Yeah.
And our sense is, given the need in India, you have multiple dialects, not languages, dialects.
Hmm.
Uh, People want conversations in the
Hmm.
local milieu. All of that is an important part of the selling process. So you try to
Yeah.
automate that too much, you're going to disconnect the customer completely.
Hmm.
Negotiation is a part of the buying process, an important part of the buying
It's an
process.
enjoyable part of it. It's
Yeah,
part of the
exactly.
satisfaction. Yeah.
Exactly. So are you going to take that away completely by
Yeah.
digitizing? So these are the critical things that one has to think around in making the
Hmm.
shift.
Yeah. It's not an easy and a direct one. Yeah, Rajesh, I want to ask you a bit about yourself, right? I mean, in your portfolio, you go from SUV and Thar at one end to thinking rural, and you said that probably it's seamless; it's not one or the other. But how do you manage the switch in your mind? How do you go from thinking agriculture to adventure in one shot? What's the key to such a stretch?
So
Uh,
actually, that's nothing compared to the stretch that you have, Dheeraj, because across the multiple clients that you have, I mean,
yeah,
you just spoke about Kimberly Clark and you spoke about Amazon, and they're very different.
yeah, yeah,
So actually, the strategic shift is more for people like you than for people like me.
yeah,
But to the extent that there is a shift, and it's not only about rural to urban product, but it's also about you need a different hat when you're dealing with or interacting with the product development teams, a different hat when you're with sales, and a
yeah,
different hat when you're
yeah,
with brand, and a different hat when you're with manufacturing, and a very different hat when you're with finance.
yeah,
And there are, like we spoke earlier, you have short-term challenges to address, and you have a long-term,
yeah.
blue skying kind of time that you need to create, and all of these. And hence, I really think that the quality leaders have to focus on building is
Mm,
around being adaptable and
mm,
situational. And very
mm,
often when people ask me, what's the right leadership style, and I said nobody should say that this is my leadership style in my way of thinking, because that means you're too unidimensional.
mm,
And as a leader, you've got to adapt, and you have
mm,
to use different styles depending on the situation or the teams with which you're working, or your own domain strength.
mm,
So in areas where I have a domain strength, my style is very different than an area where I don't have domain strength.
mm.
So you can't say that I'm going to be the same person in both. Where you have domain
Yeah,
strength, you have an opportunity to value add, and you shouldn't throw that away,
yeah,
because that's a value you bring in, and that team then has to know that in that area you're going to be a bit more involved because you think you can
yes,
value add,
yeah,
and in other areas you can't value add more than the team. Then it's about asking the right questions and helping them debottleneck, and they're two very different styles.
yeah. And tell me a bit more on this. So, is it now muscle memory? Did you have to cultivate, or just you kind of grew into this? How does this work? Do you have to practice this as young leaders who are hearing us? How would you recommend to get this stretch automatically in their styles?
I think doing multiple roles in
Mm,
different industries is a way of building the skill.
mm,
And every time I have moved to a different role or a different department or a different organization, your learning curve, you're forced into a learning curve.
yeah.
And when you're forced into a learning curve, you got to recreate all your learning. And the mind then starts preparing for that. If you're doing similar things all the time, responses come to you automatically, and that can get
Mm,
dangerous.
yeah.
So I think for leaders to develop this skill, getting multifaceted exposure is very important. When you get that exposure, you build a perspective, you learn how to connect dots, you know how
Yeah.
to prioritize. So these are all things that you pick up as you move forward.
So there's a muscle. It's a muscle that can be developed. You're saying there's a
Absolutely.
muscle which can be
Yeah.
developed. Yeah.
Yeah.
Uh, and of course, Raj, a lot of people who are listening to us, right? They're fascinated. I'm fascinated about your career journey as well, right? Do you think about box one, box two, box three to Rajesh Jejuriker as well? I mean, what? How does that pan out in your mind?
Yeah, so in a way, I answered that, but I'm going to paraphrase it again. I think we all have to know what are our inherent strengths, and that is what is box
Hmm.
one. That's your core, and
Yeah.
that's what I was referring to earlier as your domain strength.
Yeah.
Right, right. So if I have a certain domain strength, let me say in my case, my lot of my exposure has been in the space of brand.
Hmm.
Uh, I should not feel shy to recognize that that's my core,
Yeah.
and I have to be open with the team saying that this is where I think I'm going to add value, and this is
Yeah.
my primary role. Right,
Yeah.
my primary role in the organization is to connect consumer to consumer inside brand, connect that to the product offering and the value proposition. That's my primary role, and
Yeah.
if that's my primary role, that's where I'm going to spend my time.
Yeah.
So then that becomes box one. As I'm doing that, then we've got to think of what are the new skills in areas I don't know, right? And then how as an organization are building a structure which is complementary to the skills I don't have.
Yeah.
And that becomes very important. So you can learn something, I can learn something about automotive product development, but
Yeah.
for me it's a totally different box, or
Yeah.
technology is a totally different box. So I'll have some learning curve there,
Yeah.
but the critical skill I need there is questioning, or asking
Mm.
questions and learning,
Yeah.
or helping ask questions to debottleneck, and helping teams make better decisions through that process.
Mm.
So I guess I'm not compartmentalizing it as strongly as 1, 2, and 3, but it's
Yeah.
domain and new evolving
Yeah.
competencies and skills.
Yeah. Yeah.
And some of the new skills you have to learn, and some of the
Mm.
new skills you have to create teams to help you with.
So core and new basically
Yeah,
as a framework. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, and the last question, Raja, before I let you go, or you get a shot at grilling me back, right? So I saw your picture driving the XUV 700 the other day on Twitter, and then I saw your profile on the Thar, right? So who's the preferred child?
No, I don't think there's anything like that. The car I drive is an XUV 300, so you haven't seen that at all. So see, I guess these are different things for different moods, right?
Yeah.
So you use a different car if you want an adventure experience in your a part of your life, and you will use a different car. Maybe if you're going out with more people, or you want more refinement, or more technology access. So it's preferences of individuals, and fortunately I'm in the auto business, so I have the flexibility to access multiple vehicles.
Yeah, no, amazing, amazing. So you've kind of evaded that, but I get it. You're saying different vehicles for different moods. When you're in adventure, you're doing a Thar, and
Yeah,
otherwise you're doing the 700. No, the Thar is also looking very good. The new Thar. In fact, the whole lineup is now looking so cool.
yeah, it is actually. We
Yeah,
are very excited
yeah,
about it.
yeah. It's very interesting.
So Dheeraj, here's my chance to get back at you. If
Yeah.
not advertising, what would you have been?
Uh, Tough one. I mean, my other job, Rajesh, at campus was KPMG. So
Oh
I think
my God, what a contrast.
I probably would have been a finance consultant. Yeah.
Okay, but no, but would that have been your choice if you leave campus
No,
apart?
no, 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 not a choice. I mean, I always wanted to be in communication. Even in SRCC, I was big time into debate. I mean, while everybody was, getting the scores, I loved the idea of being able to connect with people.
Okay,
Yeah.
great. How do you think the advertising business model is getting redefined?
Hugely, Rajesh, hugely. In fact, one that I mean, defragmentation happened, and to the marketers' detriment. In fact, nobody cared for defragmentation except for holding companies or Sir Martin Sorrell, right? So one is we are getting back. So we are doing full funnel. So that at one point in time, some of my clients at Amazon were dealing with 17 agencies. I mean, that's ridiculous. So we are getting back. We're doing full funnel because the brand thinking execution all has to happen at one place because same consumer, and you interact with the same consumer at different platforms. That's one big change. Second big change, I think, in advertising is that for a long term, it was kind of indulgent, right? A lot of things in advertising were self-indulgent, and therefore there's a huge now mapping back to, are we solving real business problems, right? And we also now believe that an ad is not a solve for anything. So at Leo Burnett, for example, we help develop products. So Bajaj V was the product we helped develop, right? We've developed a technology which is helping bikes overcome potholes now, right? Sometimes we innovate in packaging. So a huge amount of business orientation, not believing that an ad can solve for everything, right? I would say these are two big changes, and everything then else is following this curve.
Who's your favorite client?
I'll have to
This is like the
skip
Thar
that.
versus XUV 700 question.
Yeah, so I'll take your cue. All clients are great. No, I have taken a lot of pride in launching clients from scratch in India, and the opportunity to having built them. So I would say Spotify, Amazon, Some of these clients where I mean, now when I'm in a new business pitch, Rajesh, people say, oh, but these are big brands. The truth is nobody knew these brands before we built them. I mean,
Yeah,
PhonePe,
that's
for
true.
example. So I take a lot of pride in having built these brands in 3-4 years time, from a place where nobody knew them to a place that they are market leaders in their segments.
Okay, great. Great, Dheeraj. We should catch up soon. Thank you so much.
Yes. Thank
And
you
yeah,
so much, Rajesh. Thank you for making this time. Excellent.
if you have any queries or you want to get in touch with me, do connect with me on Twitter at Rajesh664.